I think we are online.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
okay. Uh, Welcome, everybody, to our new episode of Il Gioco in Podcast. And today um, we have one of the we have as guest one of the most influential voices in European game design over the past
Oh.
40 years. A Parisian, born in 1961, a trained historian and sociologist with a PhD dedicated to the scientific debate on the unicorn during the Renaissance, which is probably one of the most opening lines any game designer has ever had. You are the author of Citadels, one of the best, which has sold several million copies worldwide since 2000. But you have signed more than, correct me if I'm wrong, 100 games.
Yeah, yeah.
Diamant, Diamant, Mission, Red Planet, Mystery of the Abbey, fantastic board game. Mascarade, Raptor, Secrets, collaborating with half the industry, from Bruno Cathala to Alan R. Moon, from the late Serge Laget to Eric Lang. You are widely considered one of the fathers of the so-called French school design. In June 2025, the German Designers Association awarded you the Göttinger Spatz for your contribution to board games culture. And you're coming off a year that makes the word retirement look like a bad joke, with releases like Treasure of the Dwarves,
Yeah.
which you yourself called your best game ever.
Yes,
And
I
what can
think, but
I?
doesn't look to be what the market thinks because it doesn't sell.
What can I say? Thank you for being here with us.
And thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Let's begin straight away with the questions. If you had to choose today between defending your PhD thesis on unicorns one more time or explaining Citadel's rules at the table for the thousandth time, which ones wins?
Certainly defending my PhD because I did it only once, so it's less repetitive, I think. Even so, I would have to read it again and check a few things because I've forgotten a lot, but it would certainly be more fun than explaining Citadels one more time.
Okay. You have retired from teaching, but in 2025, you are releasing more games than many younger designers release in 5 years. What does a retired Bruno Faidutti's typical day actually look like?
Okay, so I'm retired from teaching. I'm not retired from game design. And actually, I think one of the reasons I am publishing a lot of games now is that it's easier for node game designers who knows everyone, etc., etc. I'm not necessarily making more games than younger game designers, but maybe I'm doing them faster because I have some experience. Maybe it's easier for me to pitch them to publishers. So
Of course.
but uh, since I'm retired, I've traveled a lot. Now I'm maybe too much, so now I'm slowing this a bit. But yeah, I try to. I don't know what my typical day is. I certainly wake up much later than I used to do when I was teaching. Uh, I read books. I read rules of games because I enjoy just
Of
reading rules, like
course.
part of documentation.
Of course.
And I still maintain a small website about unicorns, so I check if there is something new written about them from time to time.
Yes, a blog, no?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And and that's it. And from time to time, I play with friends. I don't play that often, actually. I think I've never had game sessions more than once a week. I think I usually play once a week, sometimes twice, but no more. And also now that I'm getting older, I may, game sessions which are, of course, shorter. We usually end at maybe 1 in the morning, not later. We don't drink that much. We play simpler games. So everything changes, but I try to keep on with gaming.
Okay, you have discovered hobby gaming through Cosmic Encounter.
Yes.
Uh, okay, and were among the first French Dungeons and Dragons players.
Mhm.
How much of that early role-playing DNA still lives inside a Faidutti game in 2026?
I think now not that much.
Mhm.
In the games I was designing maybe 10 or 20 years ago, there was still a lot of it. Uh, of role playing, of LARPs, because I also did a lot of LARPs. But I think this 10 last years, more or less, I've evolved from this. I went into more streamlined, more abstract games than what I used to do. So I think now not that much. People tell me that I have a very specific gaming style, but these 2 last years, when playtesting my prototypes or showing them to prototypes to publishers, sometimes they tell me, "Oh, it looks more like Rainer Knizia than like Bruno Faidutti." So I think my style has evolved a bit this way. So I think it's not that much in my design style now.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay. Your very first published, this is a question that I usually do to every game designer that
Mm.
join me in this podcast. Your very first published game was Baston 1985. Looking back at the Bruno from 40 years ago, what's the one piece of advice you wish you could have given yourself?
About board games. About
Of course,
right?
game design. Yeah.
About board games, it would be try to make it as simple as possible.
Uh,
Baston and my first games were really too long and too complex.
okay. In fact, you once said that you design games for people, not for brains.
Mm.
Okay. Could you unpack that for our listeners? What does it mean concretely when you're sitting in front of a prototype?
Okay, it's not true of all my games, but it's not something I always do, but something I always try to do
Mhm.
is to do games that you would not really want to play on a computer.
Okay.
I want to play online or against the computer because I want to play design games where you want to look at the other players, listen to the other players, try to guess what they are doing, etc., etc. I think computers are great; they can do a lot of things very well. So if we want to keep on doing analog things, and I like analog things and analog games, we have to try to focus on what computers cannot do,
Mm.
on trying, and that's why there's so much bluffing and double guessing and interaction between players in my games, because it's something which is not that easy to do in computer games and not that fun to play online.
Okay. In fact, you have said that nowadays you prefer playing Mascarade over Citadels and Small Detectives over Mystery of the Abbey. Your style, has become less baroque, more
Yeah.
direct. Uh,
Mm.
but in your opinion, is that owing to the age, the actual age, or something personal? Like the things goes nowadays in the board games world, or is something personal?
I think it's both. I think I've evolved. I'm less attracted by very complex things. I read shorter books. I used to read completely baroque and complex novels. I don't do this anymore. So it's a bit the same with games. So there is something with me. Of course, there is something with the board game scene, because I also try to design games that I can sell to publishers. It means nowadays mostly relatively simple stuff. And yes, I'm becoming older, and it's part of it. I think this trend is similar. I've seen similar trends with other game designers getting older. I just had this discussion yesterday at a small game fair in suburbs of Paris with another game designer, and we played a game he was working on. I was saying, "Well, looks like very simple family fare," and he told me, "Okay, I'm getting older. That's what I want to play now." And I think it's probably something. And I say, "Okay, it's exactly the same with me."
You agreed with him. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you collaborate constantly with, for example, Bruno Cathala, the late Serge Laget, Alan Moon, Eric Lang, and more recently with the Japanese and Korean designers, game designers. You have jokingly said you collaborate because you're lazy. And it's a thing that I usually heard from even from some Italian game designers like Simone Luciani, But is this the real reason, or is there something else?
I think there's something real in it, because guys, it's not that I don't want to do the work, but it's that sometimes you are stuck with a game idea and say, okay, there's something in there, but I don't find the idea. So I could spend hours and hours and days and thinking about it, but maybe I'm just blocked, and okay, I want to do something else. So maybe I can try to find someone else who will have the idea to unblock it. And very often, collaborative game design is not really, in French we say working with four hands, for people working together, or working with six hands. It's
Okay.
not really working with four hands. It's more that one works and do something, and then another takes relay when he has the right idea, and then back and then back. So
It's working with two hands alternatively.
yeah, something like this. And it's a way to do it faster, but it's also a way to do it with less work, for sure.
People talk about the French school of design. You, Catala, Bouza, Laget, Maublanc. This French school has a bridge between German elegance and American thematic chaos. Do you recognize yourself in that label, or is it an afterthought by journalists? What do you think?
I I think this was true something like 10 or 15 years ago, but I don't think it's the case now. I think now information and knowledge about games is traveling so fast that there is no real difference anymore, I think, between, games. To me, I, I, I I work a lot with Japanese publishers, and uh, there's no difference now in the games designed in Asia and in Europe. There's difference in the way they are published. There is some difference in the art, maybe, but the culture behind is the same. It's our gaming culture, which is 50 years old, no more. Okay, there are a few exotic references, but it's not the core of the games. And the games are the same. And I can work with American designers who do it exactly the same way as I do, and German designer. So Yes, maybe when I started in the 80s, 90s, there were really differences because we didn't know each other, because, there was this small group of people working together, and it generated a style. And because, but now, with the internet and everything is crossing in every directions, and I don't think there are any more national or regional styles, no more than in literature. It's the same with literature or music now. It's the same everywhere.
The
And I think
globe.
it's and I
It's
think
a
it's a,
please, please.
and I think it's a good thing.
Yes, it's a global culture.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
and the culture of board game is even more global than the culture of literature or music or food, because it's something more recent, because we don't have, hundreds and hundreds of years of strong references to which we come back. So, it's even more globalized than music or literature or food or anything.
Before the unicorn, your first PhD thesis, your first research was actually about chess,
Yes.
specifically about how medieval legends of its origin were abandoned in favor of an Indian Arabic narrative.
Yeah.
So, was there a moment, in your opinion, where historian Bruno and designer Bruno realized they were the same person?
Well, I started uh, studying history when I was already a teacher in sociology and economics, when I was already a board game designer. And I think I choose this theme of the discussions about the origins of chess because I was, as an historian, interested in how people change their mind, how at some time in history, and I've chosen Renaissance and 16th, 17th century, how one narrative switches to another narrative and what makes people change their mind. And this was what I wanted to work on. And I say, okay, chess. I'm into games. I've heard about chess. I know a bit about the history of chess. I had read a few books about it. And I say, oh, there was this fun story about, chess invented during the siege of Troy and at King Arthur court and all this crazy story, or in Iceland. And okay, let's see how these stories were abandoned. The problem was that when I wanted to do a true PhD research, I think there was not enough matter,
Mm.
and I and it so I went to the unicorn. There were more matter, more stuff written about it, and I think it was more exciting. But if there had been more stuff about this chess legends, maybe I would have
Maybe.
maybe could have happened in a parallel history. It would not have changed much.
Okay, let's talk about current projects. You have called Treasure of the Dwarves, as I was saying in the opening of this podcast, my best game ever. What makes this one different, in your opinion?
I think it's my best game ever. Not because it's that different, because it's not very different. It's really my style of game.
Mm.
Uh, but uh, I really like games which create around the table the kind of tension you have when playing poker, for example, but without real money. And there are not that many games which manage to create this kind of tension without real money. A game like Cursed Court, which is one of my all-time favorite, does this very well. And I think Treasure of the Dwarf is really good at this, and it's
In,
also fun. because I like poker, and I thought Cursed Court is a great game, but it's not fun. It's just with tension. Treasure of the Dwarves managed to have both this very strong poker-like tension. You are always looking other players in the eyes and thinking, okay, what did you put in that box? And
fun.
moment of revelations are incredibly fun. So that's why I really, really love this game. I think among my own design, it's really the one I always want to play.
On your blog, you have been openly critical of the idea that board games. This is a matter that interests me very much. You have been openly critical of the idea that board games should be educational or have social utility. You see that discourse as a trap. Um, why do you push back so hard on that?
I think I'm pushing back hard at the moment because I think that at the moment there is a lot of discourse about this.
Uh-huh.
We are witnessing, especially on the left, a comeback of an idea from the 70s, which is, everything is politics.
Mm.
And I think everything is politics is the absolute trap. It's an idea which looks progressive and is completely reactionary in effect. Because when you say everything is politics, you don't focus anymore on the things which are really very political and very important. And you focus and you start discussing, marginal issues like language and like games and like that kind of thing, and see what is the political message. And I think it's important that it doesn't matter. It's important that we focus on the real issues. That's why I think that feminism is going in a trap now when it's focusing on language issues. Not because it's wrong, but because it really doesn't matter.
Like the Me Too.
No, it's okay. No, but when I don't know if you have this in Italy, but in the US and especially in France, we have this like trying to change the words used in the language, etc.
Not so much, but in a minor way, yes.
I think what is important is that it's not important. It's a trap because when you discuss this, you don't discuss the issues about power, about money, and that's where the problem is. And when you say there is a political message in games, it's boring. It's not interesting, and it's not important. Maybe I've played a game which, and I can play a war game. It doesn't mean that I want to make war to anyone. I played werewolf. It doesn't mean that I am always looking for the black sheep everywhere. I've designed games about treason, and there is also, it can be discussed, but there is also this idea that maybe you want to do in games what you don't want to do and what you cannot do in real life. So I think it's really a trap, and I also think, and I think with friends, that there are moments you want to be with friends, sometimes old friends, good friends, and just have a nice time. And with friends with which you don't want to discuss your personal problem. You don't want to discuss politics. And games are great for this. So let's not destroy this by putting politics in it.
Okay, see, yes, I agree.
Like when you read a stupid book, such as a very light novel, just because you want just some to put your stress out.
Yeah.
I mean, games go to do this together with friends. So you don't have to say, and when you say to kids, I see now, it's the same. I don't know how far you have this in Italy, but we have this in France. I've seen people explain that cooperative games are better because they teach children that you have to cooperate. But that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Children know perfectly well what a game is. There is no perfectly well that it's a game. And even when I was young, we still, now no one does this, but we still used to play, soldiers and da 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 da. And what? We are not more criminals than other generations because we knew it was a game. And it's important that we keep this idea of games which are out of reality.
I agree completely. Okay. In 2026 this year,
Mm.
um, we will see Citadels Duel.
Yes,
But you're not a designer. Guillaume Montiage and Manu Rozoi are.
yes.
I don't know if I pronounced them well.
No,
Uh,
it doesn't.
okay, okay. You said you were too attached to the original to do it yourself. How does it feel to hand your most iconic game to someone else for a version you couldn't make?
It's not a problem, they actually Manuel's warriors quite near from my place. So he went here from time to time. We played the game together. I saw what they were doing. In fact, they contacted me first saying, okay, we have an idea for a two-player Citadels. I told them, okay, why not? Let's have a look. I played the game with them. I liked it. And I've never been very good at two-player games, at designing two-player games. I've made a few one, but it's not my specialty. It's not what I'm best at. And I indeed knew that if I wanted to make something really two players with Citadels, it would probably be too near from the original. It would be too hard for me to really get out of the system. And I think Manu and Guillaume really found a way to keep the basic idea of the game and use it in a very different way, which works very well with two players. So it was absolutely not a problem for me, and it was really fun to see this unfold and to play test with them from time to time.
Is there any advice you could do to young game designers which are beginning right now their career or uh, their their first prototype on what to do and how to be how to learn faster and better to
So
do game design?
first, I, I told a few minutes later when I told you that keeping simple.
Okay.
Yeah, keep everything simple. I think it's important. Trust the publishers because they know games. They know what they are doing. If they tell you that this is too complex, they are probably right, especially when two or three tell you the same thing. Keep a day job because I
It
think it's,
helps.
yeah, not only because of money, but because creation is more fun and more interesting when you don't really need to have something out every few months. At least for me, I think if it had been my day job, I would probably have been too oppressed, too sensitive to always wanting to put something out and to make exactly what people were wanting. I feel more free when it's not my day job. And okay, if I have 1 month with no idea, I have 1 month with no idea. I can do something else. So keep a day job for money, but not just for money. Also because it has to be something fun. I used to say when I was a teacher that teaching was my hobby when I was designing games, and designing games was my hobby when I was teaching. And I think that's a it's a very good way to do it.
Can you tell us your first experience with a board game?
Okay. I think it was probably playing backgammon with my grandfather. Actually, my parents, I lived in a family where we played very few board games. It was very, leftist intellectuals, and there are more serious things to do. A bit like I was saying before, Okay, this kind of things, and preparing the revolution and everything. And so games were looked to, not serious enough. Even novels were, mama, essays were better. So I didn't play a lot of games with my parents. Played a bit of chess, but not that much. But actually, my grandfather loved to play backgammon. And I remember as a small kid playing backgammon with him, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then I didn't play that much, and I really jumped into games when I was around 18. And time I started playing everything, it was the first role-playing games. It was poker, it was chess, it was everything at once.
What's your most favorite board game?
I think at the moment it's Cursed Court.
Please.
Cursed Court.
Okay.
Not very well known, it's not very successful, but I like it a lot. Well, still Cosmic Encounter, but I don't play it that much now. I think it's more for what I remember of playing it, but it's a bit too baroque for nowadays. But Cursed Court is really, for me, really a game I like a lot.
But nowadays you manage to play board games. You have time to play.
It's stupid, but I really love Flip 7. It's a very basic game. It's very simple, but it's so effective and so fun. So I play a lot of Flip 7. In a recent game, I've played, I really like Trinket 12. It's a small kind of auction game by an American publisher, Gamehead. It's just out, and I've played it a lot this last times. And there are always games where I play at some time, and then a few months later I forget about him. But Cursed Court is really, I think, for 5 or 6 years, it's always coming back. So there must be something with it.
In Europe,
Rumble Nation is fun also.
Okay. In your opinion, what do you think it's missing from board games to spread them in a way more to more people?
I think it has spread a lot this 20, 30 years. Now board games are really in the mass market, not the most complex one, not all of them, but it's like with literature, you cannot have all books in supermarkets. You have a few ones. And if it brings some people to read something else, it's good. So I think it's the same with board games. I really doubt we can do more. I think now, at least in Europe, almost everyone is exposed to board games. Almost everyone knows about Flip 7, Settlers of Catan, and a few basic games. So, and Ticket to Ride and that kind of stuff. So it's, I'm really happy with it. I think the problem now is more trying to keep doing good board games, but I don't think there is much. One of the reasons it's growing now, and sales are not growing like they were 10 years ago. Maybe it's because, in a way, we've hit everyone, or all the people who could be interested in board games.
Mhm. Can you tell us how one of your board games is created? From the first idea to the prototype to the final
Okay,
final
it's
board
an
game.
I'm asked very often, and it's a question I'm asked often, and I don't know exactly how to answer because there are no first, there are no real rules. It's not always the same. And maybe it has changed also over the time. But really, there are games which start from an idea and, okay, I just write a few things and print a few cards on my computer and it works. There are games from which I think in my head without putting everything on paper for months. So it's really really no real rule. It can be very, very different one time from another.
Mm.
One
But
thing which has changed a lot is that maybe 20 years ago, I used to start with the setting idea quite often. Now I start either with a mechanism or with components. I want to make a game using only 18 cards. I want to make a game using small boxes. I want to make a game where every player, that's what I'm thinking now, has only 2 cards and play only with these 2 cards for the whole game. Well, so that's kind of idea that's more how I am working now. But also I don't think all game designers are working in the same way. That's what works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for other people. So it's
how do you make your prototypes?
uh InDesign and a few cliparts, and that's it.
Mm. How important is play testing for you?
Depends on the game.
Mm.
There are games which really need fine tuning, so you have to play test and add a few points here, remove a few ones here, etc. There are games which are so basic that okay, after 2 or 3 play tests, they work. It's okay. So it really depends on the game.
Mhm. And
But
so,
okay,
uh, how much time you you will answer that it depends on the game too. But generally, how much time do you it takes to complete a game design or a prototype for you?
I'd say I'd say 2 or 3 months,
Okay.
and I'm often working on 2 or 3 simultaneously, not always. At the moment now, I'm working on absolutely nothing. I just have a few ideas in my head wandering around, but yeah, in general, usually 2 or 3 months.
Okay. You you have been very precise and concise and brief with your answers. So I have I have finished my questions.
I experience
Uh,
you know how to. I'm often go straight to the point.
oh yes, yes, but is also good in this way. Straight to the point is good for me. I hope we'll see again in this podcast, and if you make a new board game or if you have something new to say, I hope you will join us again on the Jochen podcast.
With great pleasure.
Okay. Hi, Bruno.
Hi.
Let's let's see again in the future.
Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.